that Deputy Lee got in the points in relation to the current mortgage holders, and I'm delighted that he put that on record. Last Camporla, the Taoiseach and the government seem to think that the challenge is to restore the banking system. Whereas we on this side of the House, we actually want to fundamentally change the banking system, change the way banking is practiced, change the way regulation is supposed to be done. And anybody who believes that this NAMA legislation is going to change the culture of banking is either naive or gullible. Then Taoiseach said at the IPA National Conference on the 9th of September, we have to restore our banking system to full functioning, so that credit is available to businesses and households and trade and investment, and the jobs which depend on them can proceed. I would take issue with the full functioning. Is that a declaration that the banks were full functioning prior to the banking crisis? I would disagree with that initial premise, because I don't want the banking system to go back the way it was giving out free money, 100%, 110% mortgages. The banking system as it operated has crippled my generation, a generation of people with nooses around their neck, with millstones around their neck, with 500 to 600,000 mortgages, and are absolutely frightened to death to hear reports that the French and German economies are coming out of recession. They're frightened because they know that the interest rate is going to go up, and that's why I'm delighted that Deputy Lee raised that point about mortgage holders, because there's nothing in this NAMA plan to give protection to mortgage holders. At the Fianna Fáil thinking this week, and Taoiseach said we must fix the banks as quickly as possible and get them back lending as quickly as possible. Where was the decisiveness 18 months ago? Where was that decisiveness when small businesses were going to the wall? And you read articles, be it the High Street in Letterkenny or the High Street in Drogheda or other major towns, that the blood has been sucked dry out of their economies, and the only businesses surviving are your Lidls and your Aldi's and your Tesco's and your Dunnes stores. That's the reality of what's happening, and that was the decisiveness that was not there. And Taoiseach mentioned about the gratefulness, and Minister Lenihan said yesterday the banks need to be grateful about the job that we're about to do in relation to this NAMA legislation. Like a delinquent teenager, or like a parent saying to a delinquent teenager, you better be grateful for the sacrifices we made in raising you into your twilight teenage years. Like a delinquent teenager, the banks are the delinquent ones, and delinquent teenagers or delinquent banks don't do grateful. And maybe, Minister, you might have to come up with a new Carlsberg solution. Carlsberg, if they did grateful, maybe they'll be the most grateful bankers in the world. But I'll tell you one thing, Minister, there's no point you on that side of the House imploring to the banks to be grateful, because it's like water off a duck's back. In Britain, the debate has moved on from recapitalisation. Already there is controversy about bankers receiving bonuses again. The old culture is back. The old habits are finding it very, very hard to die. And in relation to the political debate that's not happening in this country, the debate now is happening post-capitalisation in the UK and America. The debate in relation to tying in, is it a socialist model, is it a capitalist model, is it meeting halfway? What you're about to do here, Minister, you're about to inject the socialist ideal and getting every single taxpayer in this country to bail out the banks. But once the banks are bailed out, we'll be reverting back to our capitalist model, the capitalist model, the culture that was there in relation to protecting the banks and protecting the shareholders and protecting the brokers and the people within the bondholders. The Minister for Finance told a Sunday newspaper last weekend that throughout this banking crisis there is an onus on the banks to attract private investment, and this is on the record. The Minister said they have not been able to attract private investment, and he said he cannot wait forever. The question I have to ask of the Minister is this: how does the Minister know that banks haven't been able to attract any private investment? The second question I would ask is, how do we know banks have not been offered fresh capital for some of their toxic loans over the last 12 to 18 months? Third question, Minister, does the Minister have access to information or evidence that shows that banks were prepared to negotiate with potential investors in the last 12 to 18 months? Or were the banks just waiting for the NAMA train to come along? And my fourth question, Minister, is this: with the 50% drop in property price, be it land, commercial or other types of investment properties in this country, would it not be prudent or a wise decision for an international investor to say, yeah, look at Ireland, look at property prices going down approximately 50%. Would that not be a good investment? The question that this minister needs to do to give this legislation justice, he should provide evidence where banks actually went into negotiation with potential investors, because I think there's a vacuum there, and I think there's a sinister vacuum created by banks through lack of transparency and lack of honesty. And I think the minister has to back up his statement, and his statement categorically saying they have not been able to attract any private investment. Do you mean to tell me, Minister, that there's absolutely no evidence of any type of international investors, bidders, people interested in some type of property, that they have not approached banks? The Minister needs to clarify that statement, because I think it's a very dangerous statement, and it's a statement based on evidence of his negotiations and his communications with the bank. And I'll read it again, Minister. He has said they have not been able to attract any private investment, and he says he cannot wait forever. Let the Minister stand over that comment, and let him come in here and say neither AIB nor Bank of Ireland have had any approaches from international investors for the purchase of any of their property in their toxic balance sheets. I think he should produce that evidence, because I think it could raise a few issues.